In today's video, I'll be breaking down how protein-based fibers like wool, alpaca, and mohair feel in real life and behave in your knitting. We'll talk about warmth, drape, texture, and even the fuzz factor that we like to call halo. Plus, I'll give you a clear rating system so you can compare fibers at a glance. And if you stick around until the very end, I'll provide a screenshotable summary chart for easy reference. So if that sounds like just your cozy cup of tea, get comfy and let's dive in. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. I'm coming to you today from a beautifully rainy Thursday morning, and I can't wait to dive into today's video. It's one I've been working on for a while, and it is based off of a question that was submitted over on the Wool Needles Hands tip line. The question went something like this. Hear me out, LOL. I know you already have a couple of videos relating to yarn fiber / substitutions. This is different, and I really don't see any YouTube videos that do your video explanation quality level of explaining the feel of different fibers. This would be one really long video probably, or else you could break it into fiber type groups, specifically plant and animal, less concerned about synthetic type breakdown. Probably putting silk into the plant category just because animal will be so long. Hear, hear. Discussion points. Insulative property, how warm the FO will be or will feel. Drape, fiber size, micron count, and its texture impact. Halo, fuzziness level. What percentage of a fiber type must be present in order for it to impart some of its properties? Example, 90% superwash merino plus 10% silk versus 100% superwash merino. Fiber density, you hit on this a bit in your substitutions video. Okay, it goes on to say, while your existing videos on this matter are fantastically produced and a great source of information. Thank you very much. I think there is a value in a deep dive into the fiber type rabbit hole, which is otherwise only obtained by combing forums and blogs. While those have use and value, a video from you would be more easily digestible and easily referenced. For the attributes discussion points I listed, I might suggest you assign an arbitrary scale by which to rate the various properties and create a table graphic to post at the end of the video as a summary your audience can keep as a screenshot or reference. Hope this wasn't too much. Love your content and videos, and thank you so much for the time and effort you put into creating and helping others with your content. I thought this was fantastic. I really did. And I endeavored to do everything I could to produce that answer here in one video that provides it in a relatively casual format. Now, this could be a very long video, and my goal here is to keep it relatively concise and easy to digest, a really great jumping off point for even furthering your research for this later on in your own time. So this is going to be kind of a one-stop reference that's going to give you what you need to go forward and be a more confident knitter as it relates to protein fibers that we most commonly see out in the yarn market today. And so that's kind of my goal here. I'm not pulling out really obscure fiber types. We're not getting into camel and yak or anything like that. Those are out there and they're great, but this is going to be mainly sticking to fiber types we see pretty commonly within both mass market and indie market yarn brands and companies and labels and things like that. All right, let's get into it. No more chattering. Now, we all know that not all wool is created equal. And if you didn't know that, today I am definitely going to be telling you that. Some fibers are light and bouncy, while other fibers are a little bit more heavy and drapey. Some have a soft, buttery texture, while others have a dry, rustic feel that's considered to be a little bit more coarse to the touch. And then you have alpaca, which doesn't come from sheep and isn't really considered wool, but it is a fleece-based fiber. And we want to answer that question, is it really as warm as people say? Now, to make this information as clear as possible, I'll be rating each of these fibers based on 5 key characteristics or traits. And that rating scale will be 1 to 5 stars. And just a reminder, we're talking about animal fiber, protein-based fiber. That means this fiber comes from the back of an animal, as opposed to a cellulose-based fiber that comes from plants. The first quality is warmth. How insulating is the overall fabric going to be? If it's a 1 star, then it's cool to the touch. It feels fresh and breathable, more like a clean linen blanket. 3 would be moderate warmth. This is comfortable warmth without overheating you. Think a light spring spring or fall sweater. And then you have 5, which is extremely warm. This is going to retain your body heat effectively and efficiently. This is great for those outerwear garments. The next quality is drape. This is going to talk about how fluid or structured the overall fabric will be knit with this particular fiber. A rating of a 1 means that it's stiff. It's like starched cotton. It's going to hold its shape. 3 means it's got balanced drape. It has a little bit of movement, but it will retain its shape. And then 5 means it's very flowing. It falls effortlessly over you, cascading like silk over your skin. When it comes to texture, this is how soft or how coarse the fiber feels in your hands and against your skin. A rating of 1 means it is coarse and scratchy. It's going to feel like rustic dry yarn, and it might be something that's not necessarily next to skin, but great for outerwear. This usually goes hand in hand with insulation and warmth. A rating of a 3 means it's slightly textured, but it's still wearable. Like a broken in wool sweater. It's soft, but not necessarily buttery. You know it's wool, but you're okay having it touch your skin. And then a 5 is ultra soft and buttery feel. The finest of the fine wools. You can put it against your skin and it feels like you're wearing butter on your skin. I mean, it might not be quite that extreme, but you get where I'm going here. These are the softest of the soft fibers. These are absolutely suitable for next to skin. I mean, I suppose that if you had a level 5 in texture, you could knit this into pajamas, honestly. The next quality is halo. This is the amount of fuzz that the yarn gives off. So it's how much fuzz is going to be surrounding the stitches when you knit this into a fabric. So what I'm wearing today has a halo because I have knit mohair into the mix that I have going on here. So you see that there's fuzz coming off and around the stitches. That is called the halo. If you have a rating of a 1, that means it is crisp and defined. Very little halo happening here. What stands forward is the nice, crisp and defined stitches. You are going to get some natural fuzz because it is a fleece-based fiber. However, you're not going to have an overall halo and you'll be able to focus on the stitch definition. A 3 is more moderate fuzziness, just a very gentle aura around the stitches, kind of like a worn-in sweater. And then 5 is highly fuzzy. The fibers are going to bloom significantly, or you're going to have a very distinct hairy halo surrounding the fabric. I would say what I have on now is quite fuzzy, especially because I've worn it a lot, but I would categorize this as a 4.5 to 5, not quite a full-on 5. Yes, it is definitely hairy, but it could be hairier. The fibers could stick out more in long, straight strands. This is, in my opinion, a 4 to 4.5 in terms of halo. The last quality is the weight or the density of the yarn. That doesn't mean the weight of the overall skein. That means the weight and density of each strand of yarn and what that's going to do to the overall weight of your garment. A rating of a 1 is light as air. You can knit with this and you would barely know it's there. Most of the yarns that we're talking about today are going to exceed the rating of a 1 for weight. A rating of a 3 means it has some balanced weight to it. It has a nice presence in the hand. It feels like it has some substance, but it's not going to weigh you down when it's knit into a fabric. And then a rating of a 5 means that the yarn is dense and heavy. It is going to provide some serious substantial weight to whatever garment you make with it, and that needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to what kinds of garments you're going to knit with this particular fiber. Now, before I jump in to the rating scales for these particular yarns, I am going to let you know that this is referring to worsted spun yarn. That means that before the yarn is plied into the final structure of yarn, the fiber in the fleece is combed so that all of the different strands of fiber are laying in the same direction and everything comes out as smooth as possible in the spinning process. There is another variation of this called woolen spun, and that means that there is no combing going on when the fiber is then processed into a yarn and plied and all of that. So you have a little bit more of a fuzzy, spongy, finished product. There is a whole video coming on the differences between worsted and woolen spun yarns, but for today's video, we are going to stick to worsted spun yarn. This is a more traditional type of yarn that you would be purchasing from an indie dyer or an indie yarn business or even a big box yarn company. Woolen spun is a little bit more niche, not quite, it's becoming more mainstream, but for today's purposes, we're sticking to the classic worsted versions or worsted spun versions of these fibers and these yarns. But when that next video comes out where I talk about woolen spun, it's going to be a great one to watch after this so that you can see how the woolen spun process might alter some of these characteristics a little bit. So for all intents and purposes, unless your label tells you that it's woolen spun, chances are you're dealing dealing with a worsted spun yarn, and the qualities and the characteristics that I'm sharing with you today will apply. Now that we know how we're breaking this down, it's time to jump right into the various different types of wool and fleece-based fiber that you may encounter in your knitting journey and how those are going to behave based on those 5 key characteristics. We're going to start with one of the softest and one of the most common. We've all heard it and we probably have all worked with it, and if we haven't worked with it, chances are you will in the near future if you're able to work with wool, and that is merino wool. Merino wool comes from the merino sheep. This is considered a fine wool. It is a soft wool and it is prized for its elasticity and next to skin softness. It provides moderate warmth and a smooth texture. A more common variation of merino is superwash merino, which has undergone a particular treatment that allows it to be washed in a washing machine and dried in a dryer. If you'd like to know more about that whole superwash process, I have a video for that and I'll link to it down below. If the label says superwash merino, you can add to its qualities a little bit more of a slicker texture, a little bit more of a heavy weight with slightly less elasticity than its non-superwash counterpart. In terms of warmth, merino provides comfortable warmth. Perfect for cool weather, but it's not going to overheat you indoors. 3 stars. In terms of drape, it's soft, but it does come with some structure, making it ideal for garments that hold their shape. 3 stars. In terms of merino's texture, it is smooth and buttery soft. Not quite as soft as cashmere, but definitely up there. It's one of the softest. 4 stars. In terms of halo, merino has very minimal fuzz, so we're talking about a yarn that's going to give you excellent stitch definition. For halo, only 1 star. In terms of weight, merino is light and airy overall as a fiber, and most yarns that are produced with merino fiber are going to be relatively lightweight. It's great for everyday wear, and it's excellent for garments that you're going to layer or wear under items. Merino is kind of your all-around fiber that can take you all throughout the year. For weight, 2 stars. In terms of what percentage of merino would need to be present in a blended yarn to impart some of its really excellent qualities, we're looking at something close to 20%. Just a touch of merino is all it takes to make that yarn feel more soft and more resilient. The next wool that we're going to get into is Shetland wool. This is a gorgeous wool if you get a chance to work with it. It's a rustic wool that has a slightly coarse texture, but it absolutely softens with wear. It's fantastic for color work as it's used so commonly for the gorgeous Shetland Fair Isle sweaters. It's also known for its durability and it's excellent for structured garments. In terms of warmth, Shetland wool is cozy and insulating. It's like a thick warm blanket on a cold winter day. 4 stars. In terms of drape, Shetland wool has it, but not a lot of it. It's great for more structured items and it's going to hold its shape. For drape, we're just giving it 2 stars. In terms of texture, it's slightly rough. It's not too coarse, but it definitely still has some good grip. For texture, 2 stars. In terms of halo, Shetland wool has a moderate fuzziness. It's going to soften the edges of the stitches, but it's not going to be overwhelming. It just provides a little bit more of a rustic vibe to the overall fabric. For halo, we'll give it 3 stars. Now, Shetland wool is a little bit heavier, and that does contribute to its durability. So for weight, I'm giving it 3 stars. Now, in terms of what percentage of Shetland wool you would want to have in a blended fiber to add some of that durability and strength, we're looking at something like 30%. 30% of Shetland wool in a blend, and you're going to have a really gorgeous, durable and sturdy yarn on your hands. Now, this next fiber type comes from one of my favorite breeds of sheep, and that is the Bluefaced Leicester, also known as BFL. BFL is a long wool breed that's prized for its natural sheen and drapey qualities. BFL has a smooth texture, but it has a slight crispiness to it that gives it just a little bit of a rustic vibe. It is more lustrous than merino, but it's not quite as soft. However, it does have a little bit more of a weightiness than merino does, so it makes it excellent for more drapey items like shawls and scarves. In terms of warmth, BFL is moderately warm, but it's definitely more breathable than some more dense yarns. Similar to merino, it's excellent for layering pieces. I'm going to give this one 3 for warmth. BFL is beautifully drapey in kind of a gorgeous rustic kind of way. It has that beautiful drapiness that would come with perhaps maybe a merino with just a touch of silk blended in, but of course it's 100% wool and it's lustrous and it's all because of that gorgeous long staple length that the fiber naturally has. For drape, I'm giving it 4 stars. In terms of texture, BFL is smooth with a gentle sheen. It's silky with just a touch of crispness, like fine linen rather than polished satin. For texture, I'm giving this one 4 stars. BFL has minimal halo. Stitch definition remains crisp with a slight glow, and I'm going to give that one 2 stars for halo. In terms of weight, BFL's kind of in the middle. It's not not super dense or heavy. It's also not super light. It's just right there, a nice 3-star weight that lends itself to a little bit more of a drapey fabric. In terms of the blend percentage of BFL to really impart some of its characteristics, we're looking at about 15% of BFL in any blend to lend some of that lovely luster and drape to the final product. The next breed that we're going to talk about here is Rambouillet. Now, this might be one that you've seen frequently. A lot of indie companies are using this fiber more. It's a more common domestic fiber here in the United States, and it's one of my favorite. I offer a Rambouillet yarn in my shop, Fiber for the People, which is coming back pretty soon. I'm excited about that, and I absolutely love this fiber. Now, it's very similar to Merino in that it's essentially just a French offshoot of the Merino breed of sheep, and so it's a fantastic alternative for Merino, but it does have its own characteristics that make it special. Rambouillet is considered a fine wool, and it has a soft, springy texture. It offers warmth, and it has excellent elasticity and resilience. Its dense yet breathable structure makes it a great alternative to Merino, and those that are looking for the softness of Merino with a little bit more resilience built into the fiber. In terms of warmth, it's warm yet breathable, kind of like a cozy warm blanket, but with a little bit of bounce. I'm going to give this one 3 stars for warmth. In terms of drape, it's soft and it drapes, but it has more structure than drape. So it's great for items that need a little bit of resilience and structure. For drape, we're giving this one 3 stars. In terms of texture, it's soft and slightly spongy. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. It's really very pleasant, but soft and slightly spongy just seems to fit the bill. I'm giving this one 4 stars. In terms of halo, it's pretty minimal. This one is just all stitch definition all the way, so only 1 star here. Now, Rambouillet is light, but it's slightly denser than Merino, so this one's getting a 2 stars. In order to get some of those really fantastic qualities of Rambouillet in a blended yarn, you're looking at needing roughly 20% of Rambouillet present in the blend, which is going to add some nice softness while maintaining some really good elasticity. The next breed here is Corriedale. This is one that I've gotten my hands on a few times and I really love it, but I've yet to knit it into anything. Corriedale is known for its durability and its versatility. It has a medium crimp that provides some really good structure to the yarn, but it still remains very soft to touch. It's slightly coarser than Merino, but it wears really well and it softens the more that you wear it. In terms of warmth, it's medium warm. It provides some good insulation, but it's very breathable, so it's great for a mid-weight sweater. So for warmth, this is 3 stars. In terms of drape, Corriedale's kind of middle of the road. It holds its shape, but it does allow for some movement, so we're going to give this one 3 stars. Now, in terms of texture, Corriedale is a little bit more on the rustic side, but the more you use it, the more you wear it, the softer it becomes. And I honestly love that particular characteristic of some of these fibers. When it softens as you wear it, it just makes the item so much more lovable the more you have it. So for texture, because it does start off a little bit more rustic, we're going to give this one a middle of the road score with 3 stars. In terms of halo, it's again, middle of the road. There's enough of a halo there to soften the overall stitch texture, but it's not going to sacrifice the stitch definition. So again, 3 stars for halo. In terms of weight, it is slightly more dense, but it's absolutely wearable. It's sturdy without being heavy. 3 stars. And if you're going to choose a blend that includes Corriedale and you want to know that those Corriedale qualities are going to come through, you want to look for a blend that has at least 25% Corriedale mixed in. The next fiber is one of my absolute favorites. It is buttery soft and just like a teddy bear in a yarn, honestly. And that is Alpaca. Alpaca is incredibly warm with excellent drape, but it lacks elasticity. It's not going to hold its shape. And so that's really something up front that you have to take into consideration when choosing anything that is 100% alpaca, or even anything that has as little as 15% alpaca. The less alpaca you have in a blend, the more resilient the overall fiber will be. However, it is important to remember that any alpaca blended into a yarn is going to take away from the overall resiliency. I just want to get that out of the way right away because it is something that surprises people when they use alpaca fiber. Now, alpaca is heavier than wool, so it's going to have not only the weight, but the insulation properties. Like I said, it's incredibly warm. It's fantastic for items that you're going to be wearing as your outerwear or items that you're going to be wearing in very cold climates. So let's go ahead and go there and give it a rating. For warmth, because it is exceptionally insulating, we're giving this 5 stars. It is the warmest fiber we have in this list today. In terms of drape, this is highly fluid. This is going to move. It has all kinds of drape. It's luxurious. It's amazing. It's warm. It's drapey. It's fantastic. 5 stars for drape. In terms of texture, it's incredibly soft and it's silky. However, there is a little bit of this I don't know, prickly byproduct of your experience with this yarn. Some people who are really sensitive might still find that alpaca does have a little bit of a prickle, but overall, for all intents and purposes, it's really buttery soft. But I'm not going to give it a 5-star rating here just because of that slight prickle factor. So we're going to say 4 stars. I mean, you can even kind of think 4.5 stars, but let's leave some room. I don't know. I guess maybe I should be conservative. Like maybe we should drop it down to 3 stars. And then people who might think that it's like pleasantly surprising, because there is a noticeable prickle there. 3 stars is safe. Now, in terms of halo, alpaca does have a noticeable fuzz. It's going to give it a softening effect. It's like the whole Elizabeth Taylor filter that they would put on movies to soften the women, to make them look soft and angelic. It's kind of like that. It just has this overall halo that softens everything. It's not hairy. It's just soft and it's noticeable. So for halo, we're going to give it 4 stars. Now, like I said, it's weighty, it's dense and substantial. So you're going to want to use alpaca for something that requires a lot of drape. And it's also important to remember, because of its weightiness and its density, it's going to pull with gravity on whatever it is that you create. And you also have to take that into consideration along with the lack of resilience, because if it doesn't have any resilience or stretch factor, that weight is going to pull it out of shape and it's not going to go back. So keep that in mind when it comes to knitting things with alpaca. You're probably going to want to steer clear of anything that needs to hold its shape. Anything that has a waistband or a brim or a cuff, anything like that, this isn't ideal for things like that. So you just want to keep that in mind. So in terms of weight, this is one of the more heavy. This is going to be 4 stars. Now, when it comes to how much alpaca you need in a blend to really get some of those alpaca vibes, we're looking at as little as 15% to add that softness and drape to the overall finished item. The next fiber that we're going to be talking about here is mohair. Mohair is a fuzzy, lustrous fiber that comes from the Angora goat. It adds warmth and a lovely halo, and it is lightweight and incredibly durable. Mohair is actually a fantastic substitute for nylon if you want a really beautiful natural sock yarn. It's that durable. However, for what mohair has in strength and durability, it lacks in elasticity. It's not resilient and it doesn't hold its shape or spring back to shape like a wool yarn would. Now, we are so used to seeing mohair presented in a breakdown of roughly 70% mohair, kid mohair, to 30% silk. And sometimes that goes to 75-25, but it stays somewhere in that range. So you're getting a really good proportion of kid mohair mixed with the silk. Now, a fiber like this is going to have some nice added drape because of the silk. But if we were to take away the silk and just stick to the mohair, or if we were to take out the silk down to 10% only and really stick to the mohair like what you see here, these are going to be the qualities you would experience. In terms of warmth, it is warm, but it's very light and airy, which balances things out. So I would give it 3 stars for warmth. It's like a really light down jacket. In terms of drape, it adds some nice slight movement, especially if it's paired with silk, which is really going to up the drape factor, but by itself, it's not as fluid as an alpaca. Another middle of the road rating with 3 stars. In terms of texture, mohair is soft, but it definitely has a toothiness to it, or a substance, I should say. Now, when it's paired with silk and you have it in that 70-30 that creates the mohair that is used for sweaters like this, it's incredibly soft and airy and floaty and floofy. But if we're looking at a 100% mohair yarn, or even a yarn that is 50% mohair, it is going to have a nice soft and smooth texture to it, but there's a little bit of a toothiness there, a little bit of a bite. But for most people, it's definitely next to skin. I'm giving this a middle of the road rating with 3 stars. In terms of halo, and this depends on how the yarn is put together, if we're talking about a yarn like a 70-30 mohair silk, then the halo is off the charts. We're talking about 5 stars. It's all fuzz, and stitch definition kind of disappears within that halo. However, if we're talking about a mohair that is not brushed and a mohair that is spun into a relatively smooth plied yarn, you're going to have less of a halo. So it really kind of depends on the type of mohair. Now, let's go ahead and stick to the more common occurrence of mohair, which is this one here. And let's give this halo score based on this, because this is really what we're more commonly going to see. Now, any inclusion of mohair in your yarn, as little as 10% really is all you need, is going to give it a slight halo. You can see here that this 80-20, 20% mohair has a little bit of a halo going on there. But if we're talking about something that has 70% mohair, the halo is going to be off the charts. We're talking 4 stars, 5 stars if it's something like this. It's going to blur your stitches. You're not going to have substantial stitch definition. You really kind of have to look at it closely to see the stitch definition overall. And for a lot of folks, that's exactly why they like to use it. It gives this really lovely ethereal vibe. So yeah, 4.5 stars if I want it to be balanced for halo. In terms of weight, again, it really depends. It depends on the kind of yarn we're talking about. If we're really talking about this kind of yarn here, the mohair that we see more often, it's incredibly lightweight. This is going to be a 1-star weight. It's like air, right? But if we're working with a 100% mohair yarn, or even something that has 20% mohair, we're dealing with kind of a middle of the road weight. It's about similar to a merino, and maybe even slightly more dense than that. So I'm going to give it a middle of the road score in that regard. But again, it really kind of depends on the mohair that you're after. So if this is the mohair we're talking about and the one you're looking into, it's incredibly lightweight, 1 star. But if it's something that's more blended into a fiber that includes mohair, middle of the road, 3 stars. And like I said before about blends, you only need a touch of mohair to really impart that durability and that slight halo. So we're looking at as little as 10%. The next fiber that we're talking about here is the most luxurious fiber of this list. It is buttery soft and absolutely gorgeous, and that is cashmere.
Who doesn't like cashmere? Find me one person in the world that doesn't like cashmere.
Coming from the cashmere goat. I love cashmere. I love a good cashmere sweater. It's just a beautiful fiber. Buttery soft, next to skin, warm, and just... it's cashmere. However, for everything that it has in softness and butteriness, it kind of lacks in durability. Cashmere is going to be the most likely of the fibers present today to pill, and that means it's going to get all those little nubs all over it that you have to pick off, and it can kind of become unsightly. If you're purchasing cashmere sweaters in the store, and if they tend to be more on the high-priced cashmere sweaters, chances are the yarn that they're using is being produced from the longer staples of the cashmere fleece, meaning that the overall fabric is going to be less likely to pill as much. However, more affordable cashmere sweaters that are priced lower typically are created from yarns that use the shorter staples of the cashmere fleece, and those are much more likely to pill. It is definitely a you get what you pay for kind of situation. Now, this also holds true for the yarn that you purchase. If you're purchasing 100% cashmere yarn, you want to do a little digging and find out if that yarn is spun from the long staples of the cashmere fleece, and if so, that means you're looking at a really high quality cashmere yarn, and it's going to vary depending on the staple length that's used to spin the yarn. Something to keep in mind. But for today's purposes, we're just talking about cashmere in general. In terms of warmth, cashmere is very, very warm and toasty. It's very insulating. It's very soft. It's excellent for next to skin garments that will serve the purpose of your outerwear on a cold, crisp day. I don't know if that makes any sense. Sometimes here, when it gets really cold and crispy, but otherwise it's dry outside, I can wear a cashmere sweater and it's warm enough that I don't need an extra jacket. Of course, I live in a relatively mild climate and your situation may vary, but in terms of warmth, I'm giving cashmere 4 stars. Now, in terms of drape, cashmere is silky smooth and it does have some movement, but it has more body than anything else. So it's going to hold its shape and not be quite as drapey as like an alpaca. So I think this is a middle of the road drapiness situation. So we're going to give it 3 stars for drape. Actually, I think I might bump that up to 4 stars because it does tend to be a little bit more silky and weighty. It's not heavy, but it's slightly more weighty than say a merino. So yeah, we'll do a 4 star in drape. In terms of texture, it's velvety and plush and buttery and soft, and you can make pajamas, you can make underwear out of cashmere. Nobody should do that. I don't recommend doing that, but it is so beautifully soft. It's a 5 star in terms of texture. Hands down. In terms of halo, cashmere has a subtle fuzz, but not anything that's going to dull the stitch definition. It's more just a lovely Elizabeth Taylor effect to your fabric, so I'm giving this a 2-star rating for halo. Now, for weight, cashmere has a substance to it, but otherwise it's relatively lightweight. What I love about cashmere is it might not be as warm as alpaca, but it's definitely lighter than alpaca. So you get really close to being as warm as alpaca, but you don't have to compromise a nice lighter weight garment. It gives you a good balance of weight to warmth. And so because it isn't super heavy, I'm giving this 2 stars for weight. Now, in terms of a blend that incorporates cashmere, a touch of cashmere is all you need for some really nice luxurious yarn. So we're looking at as little as 10% cashmere to add some of that luxe quality to the overall yarn blend. Well, there you have it. That is a breakdown of some of the more popular protein-based fibers out there right now that you are likely to get your hands on. I hope this provided a quick kind of blow by blow to give you some insight and make you go forward as a more informed knitting or crochet or fiber enthusiast and consumer, because that's really what it's all about. You want to be able to make informed decisions so that you know what you're purchasing makes sense for you, it makes sense for your project, and it's going to work out in the long run. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is pop up an image of the chart that breaks everything down in one visual place. You can take a screenshot of this, you can take a photo of this on your phone. However, if you would like to have a downloadable copy of this information all in one place, head over to the Patreon and I'm going to provide it over there in a post to everybody. You don't have to become a paid patron. You can just head over there and become a free member. However, if you would like to stick around to the Patreon to see what other kind of additional content is over there, because there's a lot of additional stuff going on over there, it's a great way to support the channel and I appreciate it very much. But that breakdown in one PDF document will be over there. But in the meantime, here is a few seconds of a screenshotable chart for reference. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It means a lot to me when you submit these questions and give me ideas for videos like this, because I love taking these deep dives with you and I love providing information that's easy to digest, because that's what makes everything feel so much more approachable and enjoyable, and it just makes us stronger makers overall, and I absolutely love it. I will be back with fresh videos next week, so in the meantime, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.